Welcome back, everyone. My name is Jesse Collings. I'm here with Raj Giri and Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated. Guys, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
You nailed Geary this week, Jesse.
I know. I
Yeah.
just was staring into my mirror, saying it over and over
It's
again.
like 8 years later.
Well, yeah, I know, right? Raj linked an article, or I don't know, someone on the WrestlingInc Twitter account linked an article I wrote about Zack Ryder in 2013, and I almost it was interesting reading it, but I also didn't like reading it. I was like, geez, this is a long time ago. I feel like I've gotten so much better. But it was interesting to read it back. But anyway, the real reason we're here is because we're watching Saturday night's main event. This is episode 4, and the episode we are watching is from October 3rd, 1987. So what we're doing is we're kind of jumping forward in time quite a bit here. Last few weeks, we've been had a show is probably about every 6 weeks on the calendar. And what we kind of saw is that WWF kind of takes a break during the summer at this point. And now we're back in the fall of 87, and there's new angles. The show is very different in a lot of ways than the last time we saw it. Guys, what do you think? What do you think about this kind of era, jumping forward in time, where we're kind of outside of the shadow of WrestleMania, and now we're moving into kind of new angles for the fall?
Justin, I'll go ahead and say that I feel like this Saturday night's main event, it starts a period of the best storytelling that WWE's ever done, with the Hogan Macho Man thing, and then we'll see Hogan and Bundy over the next couple months, leading to Hogan and Andre and their whole thing, and the twin brothers, and this is the peak. Before, the Hogan Andre stuff wasn't on Saturday night's main event; it was on Superstars and everything. But as far as Saturday night's main event goes, this was the greatest era, starting with this episode, in my opinion.
And Vince really figured out the format too. But all the guys, when you think of old school Macho Man, you might think of the guy that was on the broadcast in the Jake the Snake era and Ric Flair matches in WWF. But to me, the greatness of Macho, this was the beginning of that run.
Yeah.
The signature tights, the Miss Elizabeth. Just everything about this was so Randy Savage. That's the character you think of. Hogan is at his peak. Hogan is just, I think he's more Hulk Hogan than he is Terry Bollea at this point.
Yeah.
It's a really good show. Andre dressed to the nines. I really want to focus too on Bret Hart. If you read Bret's book and follow Bret's career, Bret talks about how he wears the sunglasses because he was so damn nervous. And Bret's a different guy on the mic. He's not awkward, but you could see the evolution of Bret Hart. We saw it in front of our own very eyes. He just became a different guy. So there's so many parts of this, and it's Bobby Heenan tonight on the broadcast instead of the Body.
Yep, Heenan has replaced Ventura on the broadcast, and Heenan's also kind of managing the wrestlers, which is a different dynamic. I personally, having watched a lot of Jesse these last few weeks, and I'm watching Heenan, I kind of prefer Heenan's style to Jesse Ventura's, and that's not a knock on Jesse. It's more Heenan's wittier and funnier, and Ventura's maybe a more serious commentator than Heenan is at times, and Heenan has the added aspect of he's managing these guys and he's on the microphone, which can be kind of annoying. But there's something about Heenan's charm that is so endearing to me as a fan watching this in 2020. And he's really impressive.
Heenan's awesome, but to me, it's always Vince and Jesse. Saturday night's main event, the peak is Vince and Jesse.
And Raj, to tie on that, and I'm a huge Bobby Heenan fan.
Yeah, same. Greatest manager of all time.
Oh, of course. And Dynamite on the broadcast. But it's funny. If you want the best of Bobby, he is fantastic. Yeah. Bobby is fantastic with Gorilla. I don't think Bobby and Vince, it seems so forced. And even the open with Vince asking the questions and then calling him Weasel or saying, asking about all the champions, what do they have in common? And Bobby says, what? And Vince says, none of them are managed by you. Bobby and Vince to me seemed so face, especially the Savage moment. I would have loved to heard Ventura, because Ventura had such a respect for Randy Savage, babyface or heel. I agree. I would have loved the Body on this card.
And the Body was a lot more aggressive with Vince. He would make his argument and not let Vince get anything back. He always had the last word.
Bobby would have been great during that Bundy match too, because just to add a little bit of flair ringside. I know Andre added a lot, but it would have been fun.
Yeah. So Bruce Bennett, we had posted this earlier. He said, I think the Mega Powers forming is the biggest moment in Saturday Night's main event history, then second to Mega Powers exploding in February 1989. The only one I would say is bigger would be Andre defeating Hogan for the title. And that wasn't Saturday Night's main event, that was the main event, but it's technically the same show.
Those are the moments, though. Those are, yeah. And then, far beneath that was the...
I want to ask you guys this, and then we'll get into this.
Wait, real quick. Justin, what were we going to say? Far beneath that was
beneath that is, the Sid angle, which was good. It was Hogan. Even Jake and Randy. But, that wasn't on that level.
Yeah. Sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
No, sorry. But what I wanted to ask you guys is, being fans at the time, Hogan had been the WWF champion for almost 4 years. Or maybe it's officially 4 years, a little over 4 years, when he loses it. And at this point, he's still holding on to the title for quite a bit long. And he's got a few more months, obviously, until he gets jobbed out of the title coming up in 1988. When you guys were watching, you guys maybe, I know, Raj, you said you kind of came to WWF when Hogan was already the champion. Was there this sense that Hogan was going to be like this eternal champion that he could never lose? Because watching these, it's like the title and Hogan are synonymous. There's no world where Hogan doesn't have the title. What was that like, being a fan at that time?
To me, yeah, absolutely. Hogan, he was kind of like in modern day how Ronda Rousey was before Holly Holm. Just couldn't lose, and it built the aura. It didn't hurt him that he was always winning. It kept building, and you see Ronda Rousey, Tyson back in the day, that indestructible aura, and then constantly winning, no matter how quick. It's not like people felt ripped off, and granted, Hogan is different. It wasn't that he was winning quick; he was winning in the same fashion over and over. It was always kind of the same finish, where kicks out of finisher, hulks up, boot to the face, leg drop, victory. But it worked, and it just kept building and building to where, after he beat Andre, I didn't see anyone beating him, for a long time.
And that's what happened. So Jesse, I'm a little younger than Raj, so I came in a couple years later. I love watching this stuff, rewatching it. But so to me, the big moment was I couldn't believe Hulk lost at WrestleMania 6. I just couldn't get past that because Hogan didn't lose at WrestleMania. Yeah. So to me, it took a couple more years to kind of get in that full. But obviously, yeah, it was always a surprise. Even I've been thinking a lot of The Undertaker because of the documentary, WWE documentary, Taker beating Hogan. And granted, that was the steel chair with Ric Flair sliding in the ring. And that, to me, that was a huge surprise. You just you weren't accustomed to seeing Hogan lose.
Yeah, anytime he lost was a huge surprise. Yokozuna, same thing. It was a huge deal.
Yeah, and because at that point the pattern had become familiar to all the fans, which was Monster comes in, wrecks up some people, they face Hogan, they get some heat on Hogan, but Hogan always ends up beating them. So for someone like The Undertaker, who looked like he's headed on the path, and oh my God, this guy actually won.
Right.
Yeah, I totally get it. So we're going to get things started here on this show. Again, the episode is from October 3rd, 1987 on your WWE Network accounts. So I'm going to do a little countdown here, and we'll press play, but then we'll immediately press pause to let people who might have commercials on their WWE Network let those play out before we get started. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, press play, and then press pause. And then we'll wait about 15, 20 seconds on this. This show's from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Kind of interesting. A lot of these shows aren't from New York City or Philadelphia or Boston or any kind of the big WWE network, WWE homes. They're kind of from a lot of smaller areas. There was one from Detroit earlier, but we had the last one was in Notre Dame, Indiana. This one's from Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's kind of interesting to see kind of the different markets that they were in at the time and where they chose to have these shows.
Yeah, I guess
he would have been a great politician. He loves the small market, the grassroots campaigning.
Yeah, and I guess they didn't need a Saturday night's main event in a Madison Square Garden to sell it out. They're selling out Madison Square.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting with WCW. A lot of their pay-per-views, even when they're at their peak, are in small or smaller markets, and maybe that's because WWF was blocking them in some of them. But I know, I remember there's I think it's Slamboree '98 that's in Worcester at the DCU Center and not in Boston. Justin, I don't know if you know that.
I hate to say Worcester's a hotbed because I sound like such a homer. But Worcester's a good spot for a show.
But if you're doing a pay-per-view, you'd rather be at the I guess it would be the TD Garden or the Fleet
We'd
Center.
have to look at the dates though, but they did eventually get into the Garden for Nitro. Which is tough because WWE's had such a long-standing relationship with them.
They didn't do the Garden. They did the. And it wasn't Nitro. It was the WCW did a show at the side theater. It's called the Hulu Theater now. I think it used to be called.
I think it was just the MSG Theater.
Yeah.
So Raj, when we say the Garden, we mean the TD Garden, Boston Garden. But yeah,
gotcha. Oh my God.
That's true. Yeah, we're a little bit of a bias to.
I see.
Well, I always thought that the Boston Garden is the Garden or the Garden, and then Madison Square Garden is MSG, and they're kind of two separate things. But then, of course,
I feel like my New York roommates from college would disagree, but I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, it's MSG and it's the Garden. They're two separate ones. Anyway, I hate to alienate New Yorkers because they're probably one of our biggest markets, but all right, we're all going to press play, get this show started. I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
So I decided to switch my view. So I'm watching the TV
You're
now
going
instead
up,
of the
I'm
computer.
looking down, yeah. Funny how, we've been watching, this is our third one now, right?
Yeah.
And we've been so focused on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You don't hear his name. I mean, Ricky is a figment of your imagination at this point. Like, he is just a nobody. And we've moved on to the Honky Tonk Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those things that has happened.
Yeah, as far as this year goes, this has been the year of the Macho Man as far as Saturday Night's Main Event goes. He's been on everyone. He's been the featured part. And
Raj, kind of one of the coolest, or to me, the best turns in wrestling are one of two things. It's like a big surprise. Like, I love the Seth Rollins turn on the Shield in, what was that, 2014, which we're dating ourselves. But to me, the great ones are the ones when the crowd turns. And the crowd turned Randy Savage.
Right.
You know, so I love those. Even Daniel Bryan, like when he was in the Wyatts, like there was a lot more to that program. They couldn't run. The crowd just didn't want it. They wanted. It's fun when the crowd demands something. And Savage is one of those probably the first Mania main eventer. Well, Hogan they were building as, but kind of someone that maybe wasn't planned.
Right.
But Randy Savage is one of those guys.
Yeah, and that's Savage originally wasn't supposed to win the title at WrestleMania 4. So we got Hogan versus Sika. Sika, who is Roman Reigns' dad. Sika just bit the head off a chicken, which can't do that today. PETA would be all over that.
Well, one of the big things, I'd say the biggest difference between the shows we were watching and this show is that Savage has become a babyface over this time period. And like you said, Justin, it's real organic. It wasn't like there was a big angle to do it. He's won the King of the Ring a month before he beat King Kong Bundy in the final, but we're really kind of
that wasn't televised.
Yeah, it wasn't like the King of the Ring back then.
This was just a quietly like he had been getting babyface reactions on TV, and then they booked him against Honky Tonk Man. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think there was nothing that turned him until tonight was like the official. This show was the official turn.
Mm-hmm. To his credit, Honky helps. Honky with saying he's going to take Elizabeth home, like. Honky played that role, and I don't know, something about, if you guys played, what was the name of it? It was like Superstars, I think. Raj, maybe you did. It was in the arcade when we were kids.
Yeah.
And it was like a cartoon WWF game, and Honky's wearing those light blue tights. I love Honky in those light blue. Yeah, it just to me screams 1980s wrestling, the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time. But, fun game, too.
Absolutely. Bruce Bennett noting that Hogan over the years on Saturday Night's Main Event didn't get his hand raised much, granted countouts. Yeah, it was always usually setting up his feud or ending it. So usually you'd have him lose by countout, then he'd win, then he loses. But yeah, he lost a lot. He lost to Bundy and the Genius. And there's been Andre getting pinned, but usually he'd win. He beat Nikolai and Bundy eventually, and Sika. Not spoiler alert, but Hogan wins tonight.
What?
It's just funny. The Samoans split. It's like half. It was you need the full team to me with this. I don't know why, but I think it's not much longer after that Sika's teaming with Yokozuna, like a kid, a young Yokozuna on the Indies. I feel like after you're after WWE, so it's only a year or two after this. Now Yoko, granted, has been for a while.
It was Sika. It wasn't Tama.
So what?
I think at the very end,
Sika.
Sika at the very beginning for Rodney.
Okay, because it was Samu and Tama that came in later, And they were going to come in with Yokozuna. Originally, they debuted in dark matches as a threesome, and they gave Yokozuna a separate gimmick. And
if you look at that match,
yeah,
I'll call him Rodney Yoko. Yoko has the long flowing hair. Like, it's hard to picture him in a main event spot in that role. Maybe he would have. Maybe we're just so used to seeing him as Yokozuna, so it's hard to kind of revise that in your mind. But I'm pretty sure. Maybe Jesse, I can look it up too. Did you remember that? Did Yoko team with Sika?
Yeah, Sika team. So this is almost the end of Sika's career. He retires basically in 1988. I think he did some matches after that, but he's pretty much done with the WWF really after this match, if I recall correctly. And he does start teaming up with Rodney Anoa'i, who I believe is his nephew. It's not his son.
Definitely not
because
his son, right?
His sons are Roman Reigns and Rosie. But I want to say Rodney Anoa'i is Alpha's son. But regardless, this is basically the end. And basically what the reason Sika is in this match is because the match was originally scheduled to be Kamala versus Hulk Hogan. And as we saw on the last one, that Hulk Hogan, Kamala had gotten beaten up, but Kamala leaves the company. And then so they kind of have no one and they just kind of replace him with Sika, which is why he's in this match tonight.
My favorite Sika story is WrestleMania 32. I don't know if it's true or not, but Seth Rollins cashes in. Sika's red hot. Like they were they were all fired up that Roman didn't win. That wasn't the right time for Roman. That Mania is a great finish, and I guess you'd have a different perspective had that been your son. But yeah,
it would have been interesting to see how that Mania went if the whole Daniel Bryan thing didn't happen.
Absolutely.
That definitely, same thing with Batista the year before. It definitely changed. They were expecting him in the Rumble. The Batista year, he wasn't in it, even though he was never advertised. He was in another match, and fans went crazy, booed him out of the building. And then the next year, they threw him out early like a piece of trash, and that was even worse. So, and Reigns caught the brunt of it.
And it was I didn't mind the. If you remember, we're officially off track. That Macho Man outfit is phenomenal. The whole from top to bottom.
Well, this is the Danger Zone promo.
That's my favorite Macho Man outfit. I think is that the silver and black.
So was it a party? I was covering it. Wrestling. You meet some interesting people, and I wanted an interview. I think with Jimmy Hart or maybe it was Ricky Steamboat, and I was working on the Savage piece. He said I'm going to be outside of Boston at my editor. We went to get Francis and I went together. It was a wild party. And we didn't drink, we didn't eat, we just interviewed the talent. And Ricky Steamboat was a dentist, and the guy he collected wrestling memorabilia, and he had that what do you call it, a cape, or he had that in possession. So it was fun to see people were trying it on. I'm trying to think who else was there. Fred Ottman was there. Just one of those nights where you're like, is this really happening? So when I think of the Macho Man, I think of a night like this.
Yeah, Fred Ottman. I've always wanted to ask Tugboat, Fred Ottman, who was Tugboat, why he was taken out of that SummerSlam main event in the last minute. You remember that SummerSlam? Is it 89 or 90, where he was in Hogan's corner, and then you had, who was it? It was Hogan.
Bruce against Earthquake. I think it was 90, wasn't it? Am I wrong?
Who was that? Yeah, I think you're right. It was 90. Because 89 was Zeus. Yeah, so 90. And he had... so Tugboat was supposed to be in his corner. Like a week before, they did an injury angle, and then it was the Big Boss Man who was wrestling earlier. But then Tugboat was still Tugboat a week later. Now, I know Bruce Pritchard had said that they were going to change his gimmick, but it was clear at that time they hadn't changed it yet. So he still could have done the corner gig. So it's really weird.
I love the attention to detail here, too. Like, I love the fact, and it's funny, Jesse Ventura's not on the broadcast, but they talk about early on how Honky wants to come out first. And then they give a 30-second interview where Honky says the crowd wants him, and he's going to give them what they want. So I love the fact that, there's no thought. I always bring this back to, nitpicking now and griping now, but I love the fact there was a reason the champion came out first. It's because he wanted to.
Yeah, there was an attention to detail back then for stuff like that.
We don't see now, yeah.
Yeah, now it's just, there's no rhyme or reason.
So basically, I wanted to do just a quick recap. The Intercontinental Championship, which we last saw, was Ricky Steamboat, and they were doing a Ricky Steamboat versus Savage angle to kind of set up a big rematch between them. But shortly after that, Steamboat asks for time off, and he drops the title. And Honky Tonk Man ends up getting the title kind of randomly because he was around. They were who did they want to? I forget off the top of my head who they wanted to give the title to, but like they weren't at the show.
Butch Reed.
Yeah, Butch Reed was supposed to get the title, which would have been probably had a big impact on Butch Reed's career in the WWF. But basically, Butch Reed's not there, so they give it to the Honky Tonk Man, and Honky Tonk Man basically ends up holding the title for like 470 days or something like that. It's the longest reigning, still to this day, the longest reigning Intercontinental Championship run of all time. And it was when he started calling himself the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time that Savage kind of took exception to that and is kind of part of Savage's babyface turn, which is that now he's wrestling Honky Tonk Man, who really is just like a pure heel. There's nothing babyface about him at all.
And this is how much titles could make a wrestler too, because Honky Tonk Man without that title is not a main eventer. It's not a big deal. He's entertaining, but with that Intercontinental title, they were able to headline B shows, someone chasing. It was a big deal. And when you treat your titles important, it can make a wrestler.
Raj, it's funny you say that. There's no shine to Honky at WrestleMania 3. Like, I know he has Jake and Alice Cooper's there, but it's like, it's nice to look back on, but to me, Honky didn't mean anything. It didn't nearly mean as much till he had that IC belt. And it helped, too, that there weren't any more secondary titles. Like, if you were a champion, you were the world champ or you were the Intercontinental champ. So it was the right time. And you talk about great stories. Like, Jesse, Honky holds the belt. It's infuriating by the end. And then it's not a classic by any means. But when he drops the belt at SummerSlam a couple years later to the Warrior, it's phenomenal. It's just like one of those moments that,
and he gets like squashed.
Oh yeah. It was 40 seconds or whatever. I mean, I remember just jumping out of my boots.
I don't think he had his jumpsuit off yet. I think he was still wearing the jumpsuit.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
It's like 10 seconds. Well, up until this point in time, really, the Intercontinental Championship was seen as the workers' belt, right? And it was kind of the people who had the best matches on the show. Yeah, and a lot of time after. And Honky, while he's a good character and a good heel, is like a terrible wrestler. Like, he's really bad. His offense looks terrible. He doesn't have long matches. His matches almost always end in countouts or disqualifications.
Jesse, they almost always start too with him like being chased. Like the first 6 minutes of a Honky Tonk Man are textbook. Like he go like this match is rare. He wrestles Randy for I think it's close to 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it's a good match. I mean, this goes to tell you the talent of Savage also back in back in that.
And the angle's good. It's Honky is after Miss Elizabeth, and unlike the George Steele, Elizabeth Savage dynamic, this is much more clear as far as Honky is like a piece of garbage who's going after Elizabeth, and Savage is defending Elizabeth from Honky's unwanted advances. And it really helps this angle in this match as far as it's a clear story, and you have a really good babyface and a heel who knew how to get heat outside the ring.
Yeah. So Savage here, real quick. John Colombo saying Earthquake and Hogan was a great feud in my opinion. Yeah, that was that was the formula. You bring in these giant monsters and have them destroy Hogan, and then Hogan beats him eventually. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Bruce Bannon, what was to hate? Great in-ring, outfits in detail, and Miss Elizabeth. What's to hate? Exactly.
Yeah, some guys are you could tell me the Macho Man's a bad guy all day. Right? Who cares? Like he is so intense, so likable, so charismatic. I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, Savage he was just so cool to like. And I realized it was a WrestleMania 5 when Savage lost to Hogan is when I realized that Macho Man was my favorite wrestler. Because going into it, I was telling myself as a kid that I'm going for Hogan. Like, Hogan's the good guy, Macho Man's the bad guy. And during that match, I was getting... And at the end, when Hogan hulked up, I was like, oh, come on. Don't let it end like this. And when Hogan won, I found myself mad. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I really didn't want Hogan to win.
There's a lot of parallels you can make between Cena and Punk. Like Cena in that Hulk role.
Oh, yeah.
And then Punk just being so charismatic and so real, so authentic in his character. He had a lot of Savage.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jimmy Hart got
I
knocked
think
out.
we all
here,
have that
and now
point.
the Hart Foundation are coming out. Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. It's just all Hall of Famers here except for Honky Tonk Man. Honky Tonk Man has been approached for the Hall of Fame, hasn't accepted yet. He will be there soon.
Yeah, he might as well get in. There's no reason why he shouldn't. He's a name that people recognize.
Those walkways to the ring were super long back then too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it depends on the arena. They're not in like a big arena. I think the attendance on this is like a little under 10,000. It's like 9,700 or something like that. But they're in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
They are piping in crowd noise left and right. Like there's one point near the end of the show where like there's nothing in the ring and you hear the crowd going nuts. It's like, what is this?
You got to remember back then they used to these TV tapings would be like 8 hours. I don't know if you ever went to one back in the day, but they would tape like 4 weeks of TV and then they had the dark matches and then your main event and they just lasted forever.
Bruce Brennan saying Honky Tonk Man was in the Hall of Fame last year, which sounds vaguely familiar. But
he was. Honky Tonk got in with. I think he was in the DX class. No, it was the year that Bret got attacked. He's right. Bret got attacked because Honky lost all the weight and he came to the ring in it was like a white jumpsuit. He's right because that was the one where they did it in the ring and Bret got attacked. Bruce is right because Jimmy introduced him.
I didn't see that one because that was the one I was flying back from New York at that time. And when I came back, the story was Bret getting attacked.
Right, Beefcake Hogan. That was that one. Yeah, he's right. He's
gotcha. Oh, my bad.
So all Hall of Fame. I didn't remember it either.
All Hall of Famers here.
Yeah, and Honky doesn't. I can't remember. Like he has like he's part of like the Rhythm and Blues tag team, but he doesn't really have that long of a career in WWF. He has the really long Intercontinental Championship reign, but I can't think he's around for like more than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it was like 87 to 91 maybe.
But he's a kind of
when he doesn't have the belt, he's kind of a different guy.
Yeah, but when he has the belt, he's a draw, and that's because that belt is a draw.
Yeah,
and then you could build Randy Savage because this feud, even though Savage never won this feud, it built him.
That's more Bruce's career than
he's a good villain for Savage to wrestle.
Yeah. And Steamboat was great too, but it's very different. Like you said, Honky was the heel. He played it so well. He knew his role. He played his role.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird to talk about when you mentioned the Hall of Fame last year? Doesn't that feel like 5 years ago?
You could tell me it was 7 or 8, and
But the Hall of Fame, I used to be able to tell you every single year, like people went into the WWE Hall of Fame. But like last 4 or 5 years, as I've stopped really kind of caring about it, I've completely lost. Like I can't remember who's in or who's not in, and all this kind of stuff. It's really hard for me to keep up with the Hall of Fame as far as like who's in and who's not.
To go down this rabbit hole real quick, because Owen's widow, Dr. Martha Hart, made these comments. I think the CBS Sports when they were promoting the Dark Side episode, which was heartbreaking, but it was outstanding as well. She mentioned how it's like not even a hallway of fame. And I agree, WWE should like make something. They should have something where it's, I don't know, a little more real. But to me, I'll never criticize the Hall of Fame because the talent, like it means the world to wear those Hall of Fame rings. And it certainly impacts their bookings and how many zeros they can put on it. Like I think to me, the Hall of Fame's real because their careers are real, right? All the time on the road is real. But I see both sides, but I'd never knock the talent. I mean, they put a lot of work to have that recognition.
Yeah, it means a lot
to talent. When people say like when they laugh at like the Bushwhackers or Coco Beware, these were memorable characters in the most popular time of pro wrestling in the modern era. Arguably, I mean, you could say the Attitude Era as well, but you had way more viewers on our Saturday Night's Main Event than a Raw in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, I mean, it's
at
more
this point, let them all in. I don't know. I mean,
it's not more popular.
What's that?
Well, like wrestling's more popular like across the country, like in like 1980 than it is in like 1988.
No.
Yeah, no, it is.
No, you had the territories, but you did not have any show. You had them doing big ratings.
I mean, is that the company is bigger, but as far as like
the number of people that watched each week, if you add up all those territories, it did not equal what a Saturday Night's Main Event was.
No, but it did because they were all the most basically the most popular shows in their region. If you had like. If you, I mean, like
it didn't. You had like 4 territories that were hot. You didn't have
no,
like
not
you didn't
true at all.
have 30
I don't
territories.
want to jump down this. I don't want to jump down this hole because it's a whole other argument. But it's like a misconception that wrestling was like overall more popular like in the end of the 80s than it was really.
In 1980, you didn't have any household names. Outside of Ric Flair wasn't there yet.
They were just regional.
That's not a household name.
They were in their house. I'm
talking nationally, like drawing. How many viewers you're drawing nationally? How many?
Well, the company is bigger. Like WWF is a bigger company than any other individual company.
Wrestling was way bigger in '88 than 1980, and it
went mainstream. So it wasn't just wrestling fans too. It was bigger. It was MTV. It was, Hogan was everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to compare the territories to it is on fire right now.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys go at it a little bit, though.
I lived during these eras. I
always feel like Jesse's just calling us old when he's like, "You guys lived through it." It's like, yeah.
I'm not. I'm happy you guys are here. This would suck if it was just me. Everyone would be mad at me because they're like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Savage hitting the flying elbow here on Honky Tonk.
Beautiful.
And Bret Hart running in, and we got the DQ.
And the Honky special getting DQ'd.
This angle is so great.
You could argue, it's special in the moment, but it aged even better because Anvil's a legend, Bret's Bret, right?
Right.
Honky's Honky, Randy, Hulk, Elizabeth. It's one of those rare things that somehow got better with age.
Right.
Kind of like Rock Hogan, something like that. Like they're bigger stars 10 years later,
right?
In some way than they were here. But the fact this is a young Bret Hart and a young Anvil. And I think we talked about this. I don't know, Raj, if you said it or Jesse said it, but one of you two said that Jim was kind of the star of the team. When they do their interview later in the show and Gene gets upset and walks out of them, you could argue the Anvil's the 1 and the Hitman's the 2 in this team at this point. Jim's so much more confident on in his interviews. He knows the character so well. I agree with Bruce. Hulk on Sports Illustrated, it's like, it was huge.
I have a trivia question. I
haven't got one right yet. I'm ready.
Who is the other? Hulk Hogan was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Who is the other pro wrestler to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated?
I know the answer to this. Give me a second. Let me think. I know the answer. Raj, do you know it? Jim Ross.
So Ronda Rousey doesn't count?
No, it's from 3 decades before Hogan. It's from the 60s. Yeah. It's
Justin knows it.
Yeah.
Ernie Ladd?
Think of Chad Gable. Who's Chad? Who are some of Chad Gable's inspirations?
Danny Hodge.
Danny Hodge on the cover of a 1956 edition of Sports Illustrated.
So real quick, now you have Honky had shoved. Honky's about to hit Savage with the guitar.
Honky
Elizabeth
takes
jumps in.
long. He takes so long to hit him with the guitar.
Oh, it's so great.
It's so dramatic.
He turns it the other. He puts it in the middle.
Elizabeth jumps in, and again, right here. Yeah, they don't rush it. Elizabeth's pleading, and Honky's telling her to get out of the way. It's not like he just instantly gets her out of the way. Elizabeth's pleading.
Here it comes.
Honky's trying to swing. And then, he shoved her. And any fan during this period was so mad.
And in the gyrating over her, it was like...
Right. He's so dastardly.
You can't overstate how good Elizabeth was for somebody that didn't want to be a wrestler necessarily or she was just perfect in that role. Everything she did, she made so more believable.
Right.
WrestleMania 6, that big appearance, that return, WrestleMania 7, everything Liz did, man, it was just so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never felt forced.
Mm-hmm.
But here he goes again. He puts it on one side, the other, and then in the middle, and then he pops him.
And now Honky... Elizabeth's running to the back. Honky's still taking his time. People are still not thinking it's going to happen.
You really think
you're watching and you think it's something's going to happen. He's not going to do it.
You really don't think he's going to do it.
Bam! He nails him.
A very different chair shot than the one Jake Roberts took a few months earlier. Right. Fortunately for Savage.
Yeah.
I love Heenan where his comment is just, look at the size of that hole. Savage's head is huge.
Bobby was great.
Now
you see Elizabeth coming out with Hogan. Now this was a huge deal.
And that's the scene they capture in If You Only Knew, the music video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of music
Hogan
videos,
sees
we
what's
got the
going on,
Pile
is
Driver
shocked.
music video.
Right.
Runs in,
Right, yes.
and now they're beating down on Hulk. This is Bret Hart and Hogan, kind of putting the chops to each other back in this era, and to think where they'd be 10 years later,
Right. Or 30 for that matter. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're both in the WWE 2K20 commercial together, and you could still tell that Bret doesn't like Hulk.
Well,
So
Hogan.
we did. One of my favorite stories of that day was I was there for a couple days for interviews. You got to go on site.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for the whole thing, but I was there the day that Shawn and Bret were there. And like I'm sure it's at some point they get along and they're both really successful. But one of my favorite moments was it was Shawn standing here and Bret here and both looking the other way. Like I actually love that commercial though. I think that when they shake that scene, like they all shake hands, he says Bret, Shawn, Austin pats Hogan on the shoulder and kind of gets in his face. It's a really well done commercial. I like it a lot.
And this is when you were talking. So now Hogan, Savage offered his hand. Hogan again took a little bit, finally accepted it, and you can see the crowd. They're going nuts. This wasn't the sweetened crowd noise. You look, they do the wide shot here. Crowd is just going nuts. Hogan, Elizabeth, Savage celebrating. A superstar is born.
Well,
you guys elevated Macho Man to main event level.
You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but Hogan had teamed up with Mr. T like in the past, but Hogan really didn't have like a partner, a babyface partner that was like a star close to his equal.
Right.
So by him like kind of endorsing Savage, it's like it really like you say, Raj, it takes Savage up to a next level, and it's almost like Hogan introducing this guy as like this guy and me, we're the mega powers. It's not me, like it's not like I'm the biggest star, and this guy's my understudy. It's these guys are two stars, and it's Hogan kind of putting Savage on that level.
Yeah, this is a good point, Bruce. Again with the trivia. Yeah, after Savage turned on Hogan. When the Mega Powers exploded, how crazy that Hogan threw Bret and Shawn against the wall backstage. Yeah, Hogan was looking for Savage, and he's like, "Where are they at? Where are they at?" Grabs Shawn, and then he grabs Bret. So it's like, where they would be. Again, 10 years later.
You gave me an idea for a story. If that ever runs, reach out, and I'll have a thank you for you. But that's a phenomenal. What a mind you have for wrestling. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm going to put out this comment, if only because in WCW, Booker T wrestled like Big T, who was like a wrestler in WCW, and the letter. Yeah, it was Ahmed Johnson, and it was whoever won got to use the letter T. They owned the copyright for the letter T.
Yeah, that was during WCW's free.
It was peak era.
I don't think it popped the rating.
No. So this was the main event, even though this was one of those rare cases where Hogan's match was not
the title.
Yeah, now we got Sika in the ring. Hogan
So
and Sika.
You could put Fuji with the weirdest villain, and he would make the guy scarier, more believable. Like another guy, like the supporting cast here is so incredible.
So have you guys ever heard the origin story for how the Wild Samoans like got into wrestling?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so they're in San Francisco where Peter Maivia, The Rock's grandfather, is like a big star, and he would draw the Samoan population into the crowds, and they would get really into the matches. And when there were these two big guys who always sat ringside, and they thought everything was a work or everything was a shoot, so they would like terrorize the heel wrestlers, and the heel wrestlers were terrified of these giant Samoan guys. I think there's one story I think Pat Patterson told where they rip the bolted up chairs off the ground and try to get into the ring, and they have to be like restrained by like 300 security guards. And so basically Peter Maivia ended up smartening them up, being like, hey guys, like it's not real, like stop trying to kill the heels. And they actually got into wrestling that way, and that's how they kind of became into wrestling, and that's kind of how they started their friendship with Peter Maivia and ended up considering themselves brothers or blood brothers, which kind of is why The Rock is related to Roman Reigns and all that stuff. They're not biologically related, but from a family aspect they are related, and it's a really interesting story.
I like how they have Hogan on here doing this promo, even though he was just out without he was dry. I mean, yeah, you can't nitpick those things.
Well, they had a commercial break too though, so it kind of made sense. Jesse, those stories always, whether it's true or not, I think the more time you spend around wrestling, the more time you question. It could certainly be accurate. but it always makes me think back to like if people are anyone watching is a Yankee fan or baseball fan, but El Duque, Orlando Hernandez was such a great pitcher. And Raj, I don't know if you know his story at all, but he defected from Cuba, and the story was like he got on like a raft and barely made it over, and the kind of the backstory was the whispers was that wasn't the story. It was just kind of a made for TV with El Duque. Who knows? Yeah. But with wrestling, I love that. Like, who knows? It reminded me, that story, Jesse, reminded me of Dustin's entry into WWF with it's a DiBiase match, and he like DiBiase goes in the crowd and throws some shots at Dustin, and that's whether it's true or not, I don't know. That's kind of the fun of wrestling, I suppose. They make you question.
Yeah.
I love the comment. Somebody said, "Tastes like chicken." I'll take your word for it.
When I was grimacing earlier, they were showing Sika eating that chicken. So yeah, Roman Reigns' dad here in action.
Yeah, and like I said, this is kind of the end of Sika's career. He only has about a year left before he kind of retires. But him and his brother, very successful wrestling trainers. They trained a lot of talent at the Wild Samoans wrestling school.
Alpha. And they just recently shut it down due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, that's happening a lot. I've heard a lot at wrestling schools. Just seeing on social media, there's some crowdfunding, GoFundMe, trying to save some of these wrestling academies. But these are not big money operations in a lot of cases, and a lot of times they're totally reliant on keep recruiting new students and that kind of thing. And it's unfortunate to see schools like the Wild Samoans Academy, which has turned out so much talent, not being able to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Raj, I got to ask you, while Hogan, and again, this is a young, hungry Hulk, still trending up. I'm going back to thinking of Samoans, thinking of Yokozuna. Had he wrestled as a true Samoan, not the Yoko character, what was his name? Is it Kokina?
Yeah, Kokina. Right.
What's the ceiling there? Is there a ceiling?
Yeah. I mean, I think he would have been like Kurgan, just kind of he makes a difference when he's in the ring. It's a sideshow thing, but it dies out quick. I think because of his size and how he moved, they would have probably repackaged him eventually. He probably wouldn't have got the Yokozuna gimmick, but something similar to like what they gave Umaga. But
Fuji was good too. Fuji was very, very good with it. That's like Fuji's last. I think that's his last like great moment too.
Yeah.
Fuji was, and they brought Cornette in, but
right.
Fuji
I mean, they had him manage like Jarrett, which was the most random group duo ever. But that was his last memorable one.
And Rob Van Dam.
Who?
Which is
Ricardo Rodriguez and Rob Van Dam.
Oh,
that's always the most random pairing. And Ricardo came out wearing like the airbrushed outfit.
Tougher to roll the R on Rob Van Dam than it is on Alberto Del Rio too.
So this was your very basic Hogan match that just worked,
Makes me think of Curt Hennig very briefly. Only when the guys could knock their head back and they had the long hair, it looked so much more believable. Hennig was a master at it. You can see Sika's good too. Obviously not Hennig, but a very different style. He's a monster.
Yeah.
Well, the Wild Samoans was really successful. I mean, we know about them mainly because they spawned such a great wrestling family. Really successful tag team wrestlers, wrestled everywhere, all over the world, not just WWF, for a good 15 years after kind of breaking in an unconventional way. And this is kind of, like I said, this is kind of the end of Sika's career. I think Alpha might already be retired.
At this point,
but Sika had been tagging with Kamala, which is why Kim Chi is out there with him, and he has two managers. And like I said, this match was supposed to be Kamala versus Hogan. Kamala leaves the company, I think, in a pay dispute the month before, and they say, whatever, we'll go with Sika. But he's definitely I don't want to say not convincing for Hogan's opponents, but I don't think anyone really thought that Sika was going to win this match.
No.
So you probably could have put anybody in there, and nobody would have thought otherwise. What about Kamala? The next time we see Kamala is the Taker feud? Is that right?
Kamala went to WCW.
No, back in the Federation.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That was, 1991, maybe? 92?
Years removed, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Fuji with the cane.
Oh, yeah. And he didn't actually hit him with it, so it wasn't a DQ. Hogan gets it. He's going to hit Fuji. Referee grabs the cane. Hogan
why
shoves the ref.
Why couldn't Hogan hit Fuji with the cane? He just can't hit Sika with it, right?
Yeah.
You wonder too how many more action figures that sold, like the Fuji LJN figure came with a cane. Right. I don't know. It just added to the excitement.
Well, you don't want it to escalate. If Hogan's going to hit Fuji with the cane, then there's a good chance he's going to hit Sika. So.
What is the worst, or most unconvincing, repeated foreign object in wrestling history? I'd like to hear people's answers on that, because I never bought Finley's shillelagh. I know it's a walking stick in Ireland. I never bought that it would decimate the guys. It was made out of steel or something. But Fuji's cane isn't that convincing. To me, at least.
Really quick, Hogan just went for a splash. I don't think I've ever seen Hogan do that, except for this match.
Hit it, especially. I actually think, to Jesse's point, maybe it wasn't believable that Sika would win. They work a good match, though. It's a pretty entertaining,
This is.
You can see Sika is just, a pro's pro.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Sika physically is convincing, which is really all you need, because Hogan's such a good babyface that's easy to get the heat on him, get the managers involved, get the heat on him. Hogan hulks up, makes the comeback. Everyone, people really liked working with Hogan, A, because your paychecks were much bigger when you're working with Hogan, and B, he was just easy to work with because he was so over. It was easy for a heel to get heat on him because the fans would boo anything that you did against him.
I guess I'm a rookie at this. So the last couple weeks, I didn't realize we could look at the live comment chain. I'm reading it tonight. They're making me laugh. Some of these usernames too are outrageous. Somebody said Sherry's purse. That's a good one. Yeah, there it is.
You know what? Actually, for me, it is would be Triple H's sledgehammer, because no one with half a brain would think you could hit someone with a sledgehammer and they're not dead or comatose. It's way too unbelievable.
I never liked that because he also never swung it the way you would swing a sledgehammer.
Yeah, always
that's why steel chair is perfect, because you hit it the way you would actually hit someone with a steel chair, and you could sell the idea that it would hurt.
Yeah, brass knucks are perfect.
Yeah,
I never bought into the. I know we saw it with Adrian Adonis a couple of weeks ago, but I never bought into. I wish I had my "Yes, I am a model" pin on right now. But the cologne, the arrogance, it was I don't know.
Yeah,
it was a little bit overboard, but that would have been mine.
There was the urn,
even though his feud with Jake the Snake was pretty cool.
I loved it. Loved the blindfold match. Yeah,
I like the urn. And an urn would hurt if you hit it, but the way Paul Bear swung it, it was clear it wouldn't actually hurt if it hit you.
He would really go over the head. Jesse,
but no one got hurt when Paul Bear hit him with it, right? It would always. But
Hogan goes into the urn in that Survivor Series and throws, I don't know what it is, ash into
smoke. Yeah,
into.
It was the power of the Undertaker.
That may have been Tuesday in Texas, actually.
Yeah, that's title, and then he rolled him up or something to win.
Right after, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Vince pay-per-views. We just got your money at Survivor Series. Can we just take $20 more from you each?
Exactly. We teased that Randy Savage was going to be wrestling tonight, but you got to pay another $20. It's actually going to be on Tuesday.
Come on. One of my favorites.
Yeah. There's
what a weird
cast or a Luger steel plate. Yeah.
Great point.
Good calls.
I think the steel plate, that's his finishing move. I thought that was kind of BS. But I like the cast. The cast makes sense as far as if someone hits you with a forearm and they have a cast on, it would hurt more than a normal forearm.
Yeah. We should have realized with Lex back in the day that when your finisher is a steel plate in your forearm, you're not going to be the guy. So was perfect. Why do we even who was it? It was Lance Archer recently said. I know he did a media tour before Double or Nothing. WWE didn't want him to use the blackout. This guy's got this badass move. It's awesome. You don't want him to use it, but
it's why? Why other than you're just doing this power play that you think you know better, but
if you do, let him do it, and it won't work.
Yeah, it's happened for so long, decades.
And the thing with Archer is that he's gone on the record. He went to WWE, and the idea is you see Archer now, and you're like, how did people drop the ball on this guy? He's huge. He's got a great look. He's a really good worker. He's agile. He's been around forever. When he went to WWE, he said they didn't want him to be the monster. Whether they had too many monsters or you can't do a choke slam because that's Kane's move, and you can't do a powerbomb because that's this person's move or whatever. You can't walk the ropes because the Undertaker does that. I get all that, but they didn't really want him to be a monster. So then you just have this guy who's I guess a good worker, but if he's not going to be a big guy, what's the point? And it's not just WWE. I mean, he's been around forever. And it wasn't until really last year when he got a singles push in New Japan where people actually began to realize that, oh my God, this guy's like super talented.
Well,
Hogan now.
Yes,
with
but
the
he
slam
also
on
worked
Sika.
in KES for a long time too. He was with
Yeah,
Davey
but he
Boy.
wasn't pushed.
Hogan
like,
actually got up before that 3 count. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He did.
Fuji takes another
He's
shot.
really-
He got up prematurely, but Hogan got the 3 count. Fuji gets on the apron. And Hogan just is beating everybody up.
Where's Kim Chi going?
Steve Lombardi.
It's not the Honky Tonk Man tonight.
No.
Or is it? He's going to give him the atomic drop.
Kim Cheese goes flying. Great.
I'd like to
stuff.
see
Hogan
someone
with
do
win.
the atomic drop again.
Up until right now, this is just a perfect Saturday night's main event. This was an entertaining match. You see the top star. You had that great angle with Savage. You just made the superstar. Really great stuff. Hogan poses.
Hogan's
Great
hair is on its last legs here.
It's pretty much been that for. It's like that for the next 15 years.
I feel like when he first gets the title, he's got more than that.
Yeah, he could part it to the side when he first had the title.
Well, the
Gosh,
famous
it's so
story
weird to
now.
think
This
these
is
guys. I'm saying it's so weird to think these guys are younger there than we are now.
Right.
It's like that. That boggles my mind.
It's weird to think Hogan is younger here than Jeff Hardy is now, right?
Right? Yeah.
By a lot.
Or Finn Balor. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. Because
Oh,
they
it's
just look
Hogan's
older.
like-
They look more, I don't know what the word is. Not manly, but more seasoned, I guess. I don't know.
I think he's 32, 33 here, Jess, in this ballpark. I think he was 36.
Because when he joined
by
WCW,
Yeah.
he was early 40s. And that's not that old. I mean, AJ Styles was way older than Hogan.
no. Lance Archer's 43.
Huh?
So Orndorff has turned babyface.
I still think it was too early to beat Lance Archer. And but that's another story.
Double or
I
nothing.
know.
What's that?
I understand. I don't, but I
Double or nothing, we're
understand.
talking?
Yeah.
I don't get it. And I know, like, I think Cody's the right guy for the weekly challenge. And
Absolutely.
I like
I
that
agree.
a lot. It's just a weird, but I would have loved, I don't know what you do, but maybe you don't put Lancer in the tournament and
Yeah,
he just
you don't
wreaks
put him in the
havoc.
tournament.
Right, but he's lurking in the shadows. You don't know what,
Right.
and he's there. The match was
Absolutely.
good, but like, I don't know. They could have built that out for a long. I'm really curious. Out of the it's gonna be where do they go next with Lance? I think he's good enough to make it work, but I agree. You didn't need that match. It probably could have been Cody Darby. It probably could have been Cody. A lot
Could
of
have done
guys.
Cody Darby.
Or-
Could have done Cody Wardlow. It might be too soon, but still, this was. There's a lot of guys you could have put in that spot. Same as
Could have
Brody
done
Lee. I
Cody
don't think you should have beaten Brody Lee yet either. But
No. Well, you put him in that match though. I know they tried to protect him, but he's another guy. Where do you go from here? Could have done Cody Dustin. It's empty arena. It's a rematch of last year. It would have been interesting.
yeah,
and you still could've
it's a
done-
great story. They have to face each other. It's not like they want to.
And you still could have done a thing where Archer beat down Dustin. Like that doesn't
Right.
change. And maybe Dustin comes in weaker, but
Absolutely. So now we got King Kong Bundy versus Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Orndorff is now a babyface managed by Oliver Humperdinck. Just baby faces with managers outside Elizabeth just never worked in WWF. I'm trying to think of an Undertaker with Paul Bearer, but that was after the fact.
Paul Ellering.
Paul Ellering, even in WWF, he was there for a few months.
Well, they replaced him with a dummy.
No, he came with the dummy. Paul Ellering introduced Rocco.
Yes. But wasn't Rocco around after Paul Ellering leaves?
No, it was that same year when Hawk had his issues and they were gone. So Bundy,
I like the promo from Bundy.
yeah, he looks so young too. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think he's mid-20s here. I mean,
He's really young when he breaks out. That's one of those things. Now it's because maybe it's the bald head. He doesn't really look like he's young, but he's really young. Like, he had wrestled in Japan before coming to the WWF, but he's not and I think he broke in Texas, maybe in the early '80s. But he's only a few years really into his career at this point.
Yeah, and
I
up
got a
until
comment.
this point,
Every time Bruce makes a comment, he mentioned Jimmy Hart. I'm with you. Like I love Jimmy. Is that if he's a good guy, I'm always waiting for Jimmy to turn on somebody. Like I think there's certain guys that are like perfect villains.
Yeah,
I think Jimmy there. I think Jimmy Hart's perfect. He made every guy more believable.
Someone
him
needs to bring back the megaphone. The megaphone gimmick is a great heel gimmick. I've never heard anyone talk over a megaphone.
You know who I think could be great with it is
I'm gonna guess
Vega. Oh, sorry.
Oh, wow. I would have said Xavier Woods because he's got the trumpet, but like he's another guy that could make that work. Vega would be perfect with that. Yeah.
Vega got kicked off the network.
Britt Baker.
Oh yeah, Britt Baker. Absolutely.
The right kind of heel, like it's a really antagonistic thing, especially if in the closed the closed circuit shows, like without the crowd or anything, where it's like extremely unnecessary to have a megaphone.
What's the timestamp on your network right now?
Mine is 44 minutes and 44 seconds.
All right.
I'm a couple seconds. I'm like 44:50.
All right. Let me know when you get to 45:10. I'm gonna hit play again.
I think that Bundy is like something so subtle about his character is the straps. If those were thick straps, he looks a little less intimidating. The fact they were like, I don't want to, what do they call spaghetti string? Is that what women's dresses are like?
Right. Yeah.
45:10, Raj. I'm there right now.
All right. Cool. So Bundy's choking Orndorff on the rope.
It's a classic big guy thing.
Could you imagine like if Bundy, and this is not a dig at KO, but I'm saying imagine if Bundy dressed like KO and had a mullet, right? Like he wouldn't be the same star. It's that by shaving the head and wearing that outfit, he looks like a big deal. And these two right now, Orndorff and Bundy had headlined WrestleMania 2 the prior year against Hogan, and Orndorff was Hogan's more or less biggest drawing opponent. You know, Hogan and Andre hadn't done many house shows up until this point, so these two guys were, drew a lot of money with Hogan.
And a steady card so far. Like the Honky Randy match, really good. This match, really good. Like it's a good. I feel like every week we've watched, and Jesse, maybe it's, I hate to say because of George Steele, but George was obviously at the end of his career, but like there's always been that lull, right? Tonight doesn't have it.
Right. Yeah, I mean George, but George's for as much as I said, like it's kind of the end for George. Like his ankles were hot. It's because he's working with Savage is probably the reason why. But people were into it. It doesn't, the work isn't really that good. I can't wait till Savage. He wrestles George Steele 3 times and then Honky Tonk Man another time. He's really got he's like Atlas carrying the stone.
Rummy saying there was that one guy with the megaphone with the primetime players that got suspended. Yeah, Abraham Washington. Did he have a megaphone? I'm forgetting.
I think he had like a mic, like he was wearing one of those headset mics.
Right.
He would be like live to the crowd, but which I guess is kind of the same thing. But there's something particular about the pitch of like the megaphone, and you can also use the megaphone.
It's really irritating
with it. Yeah, it's really good.
Now Heenan just left the commentary booth. Going out
because Orndorff is feuding with Heenan at this time, and Heenan says he has a surprise.
If you thought Liz had a big surprise when she went back to get Hogan, Bobby's got a bigger one.
Right. Yeah, this was 2 of those where the manager's going to the back to bring someone out, and Andre the Giant.
So Andre had been never seen him dressed before or after. Like Andre, all I can think of is at the Clash of Champions, his Gordon Solie WCW appearance. And he's in he always had weird clothes because he was probably it was hard to find regular size clothes. But Andre looks like $1 million tonight. He's moving well. He looks great.
He looks just like
a fun Andre appearance.
He just looks larger than life. He's a difference. You can't take your eyes off of him when he's out there. He'd be like, later years Undertaker, like having that aura where you walk out and you just can't help but look at him.
He had been gone from the company for a few months. We saw him, kind of feuding with Hogan right after WrestleMania 3, but he leaves. He's got some health issues. He needs time off to kind of gear up for another run. So this is kind of him coming back into the company after taking a few months off. And it's interesting that Heenan brings him back because it's not long after this where he ends up being recruited by the $1 Million Man and ends up being with DiBiase and not Heenan.
Still a great story. I'm laughing at the comments. Somebody said, not $1 million. He's a giant. I'm going to use that. Andre looks like $2 million. He looks incredible. It's like the hair. And Andre didn't know he shaved. Andre didn't know. Like he just looks like someone gave him a razor. It must have been excited to be back. It's a big. And Raj is right, man. It's just electric when Andre's there.
Yeah.
Even him and I know he's going to get involved, not to give it away, but he's going to get involved momentarily here. Like, it's just fun to have Andre around.
And these guys, they're moving. When you think about the '80s and you know all the matches getting 2 stars in the Observer, but this is an entertaining match too.
Yeah, I mean, Orndorff is a great worker, just all around great
and
worker.
Bundy was,
Bundy's a good deal, and he can move.
Exactly.
He's younger. And he can sell and he can bump, which is really like something that, like, yeah, big men shouldn't be bumping all the time. But if you have a big man that can bump, it's really useful. Like, you see him feeding the comeback right here.
Yeah.
You have to be able to bump to be able to do this. Like, great
if you
work.
watched what was that? That was Connecticut. So what was that? Hartford. That was WrestleMania. Wasn't 10 was Matt? So it was 11.
It's
So
WrestleMania
Bundy,
11. Yeah.
Bundy Taker is awful.
Yeah.
Like Bundy. Like if it was this Bundy Taker, it would have been phenomenal. Like that match was.
Well, Taker was also handicapped with his gimmick then. That's when they didn't want him doing much. It wasn't until like Taker started working with Brett that
small guys, yeah.
He was
and Taker's
allowed
always
to start
been like
doing
that.
more.
Taker's always wrestled giants, and he hasn't really, like, he wrestled Big Show and he wrestled Khali a bunch. He wrestled these big guys. And there's a similar kind of dynamic. It was always like he's working with Shawn, he's working with Brett, he's working with CM Punk, he's working with smaller guys who can bump with him and be a little bit more agile, which is really when he came into his own as far as being like a really good worker.
I don't think that's limited to Taker. I think most big guys always seem to work better with smaller guys. The 2 big guys, it's rare. Like, you have to have the story there, because otherwise it's a plotting match, And
it's weird in wrestling. It's not just chemistry. It's like, to me, I always loved, it was Head Games, right? Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, such a great match. And why would Shawn bump himself for Mick? Now Shawn was very generous with an opponent if it worked. But to me, that works so well because Mick's so different. Right, like Mick is never going to be Shawn Michaels. He's never going to take that spot, or he's not the sexy boy. I know he does Dude Love, but it's kind of a parody of it. To me, you've got to be different, right? Like Taker Brett is another great example, but it's tough when 2 guys are so similar. One of the comments I just saw briefly was, I wonder if Andre liked working with Bundy because they were 2 giants. So much of wrestling is the personality part of it too. Right. If you don't like a guy, you don't want to work with a guy. You don't make him look good. You don't make him look good, it don't work. So it's tricky. Wrestling's so unique in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 2 quick Andre-related notes. First, I just started reading the Pat Lepard Andre book that came out earlier this year. If you like Andre and you want to learn more about him, so good. It's so good. Everyone should read it. It has so much information about it. It has so much information about the various myths of his life. If you're interested in knowing a lot about Andre, you're not going to find a better book. And also,
real quick, Orndorff was in the corner. Andre pulled him in, and then Bundy nailed Orndorff with the splash. And Bundy pinning Orndorff makes all the sense in the world, because I believe it's the next Saturday night's main event, right, where Bundy faces Hogan for the title.
Yeah, I believe you're right. Let's quickly look that up.
Because I think the next 2 are Hogan versus Bundy.
Yeah, Orndorff sells this so well too. This is a really fun moment.
Right. Bam! Like that splash, he really gets in there.
Yeah.
Looks like it hurts, and Andre.
Well, and they sell it
into the back. Andre looks like just so terrifying there.
I like how he shrugs off the fan too. This is such a young Bret Hart in this interview, and again, to me, the Anvil, especially without Jimmy Hart, the Anvil is the guy that carries this team. I mean, obviously, Bret actually. I'm super biased. I'm a huge Bret Hart fan. I enjoyed all his work, and I think he's such a good promo. Like Jesse, he was in Webster a few months ago, but a couple of years ago he was in Lynn. He did a show at St. Michael's Hall, and Bret cut this it was like a tearjerker about how he grew up on the road and all the memories and the faces, and he's pointing out people in the stands or not the stands but the seats because there were no stands. But he is such a tremendous promo now, Bret, but it took time to get there.
Yeah, you're watching this promo. It's like Anvil's the one with the charisma, and Bret gets in a line here.
Yeah.
Bret gets in a line.
One of the things Bret talks about in his book is that the WWF would do these videos to advertise with for the house shows.
Why did Mean Gene just storm off? I just missed that.
He was so upset about what they did to Elizabeth.
Oh,
so
that's great.
Oh, it was fantastic! It reminds me of like when Mr. Feeney walked out on the kids in Boy Meets World reference. But you never see Gene walk out on a guy. He's so
disgusted.
Yes, it's a nice touch. And Jim Neidhart's defense was great too. He's like, our manager just got knocked out too. We had the right to be upset too. And then they kind of laugh about it, and Gene gets pissed. Again, this supporting cast of, and I think you said it last week. Like, would it have mattered if these guys were around now because they couldn't be themselves? But Gene Okerlund, like, if he couldn't be himself now, what a disservice that would be to wrestling fans. We got so much more out of the product because of Gene being Gene.
Yeah. I mean, now they would just have the interviewer say, "So, what were your thoughts on the match?" And then blank stare to end the segment. If they allowed, some of these personalities to really come out. Because, Gene, it just made it seem that much more dastardly. You really want to see the Hart Foundation lose here. Facing the young stallions.
Even the late Craig Sager in the NBA, like, he had a weird, the funky suits. But you looked forward to those interviews. It was not vanilla. It was, I'm going to watch this. So, you don't have that now.
Yeah, and I think part of it in WWE is the responses often are so scripted that it doesn't help the announcer. Like, these guys are coming up with their own responses for the most part. There's some scripting going on a little bit, or bullet points, but when you have different guys reacting differently, it's easier to play off them if you're a pro like Gene. But when these guys are men and women are being scripted and they all kind of sound like robots, it's harder to draw more personality out of them because they're being told exactly what to say.
Jesse, I got a trivia question for you two this week. You guys ready?
All right. Let's hear it.
Who named Roma and Powers the Young Stallions?
Roma and Power. I'm going to I don't know the answer, but I'm going to use a tiny bit of logic and guess Pat Patterson.
I'm going to guess Jimmy Hart.
I believe we'd have to go to the judges here, but I believe it was Bruno during a broadcast, calling them a couple of young stallions.
Commentating.
It just stuck. So
yeah, I mean, Roma and Powers are both like really early into their careers. I think Roma's only been wrestling for like a year or two, and Powers just about the same amount of time. So they really are the young stallions.
I feel like Powers is a Big Sean Studd kid too. Like, he worked with Studd. It's the wrong time to be a cookie cutter tag team, because that tag team division is just overflowing with talent. But
and that's what, when people talk about how the 80s all the guys were roided up in WWF, in a weird way, when you think of a lot of the big stars, they weren't the gigantic outside of Hogan and Warrior. It wasn't a lot of the guys didn't have that roided physique in the case of like DiBiase, Jake the Snake, Honky Tonk. Savage, he was muscular, but he wasn't the huge roided out guys like
early Duggan wasn't that way. Yeah,
right. Duggan, because you look at Roma and Jim Powers, you would think those would be the guys that Vince would be pushing, and they're against Brett and Anvil, who aren't that impressive physically, or I mean, they are in person, but in this era, they're not. But
yeah, I mean, Anvil has like a different type of physique. He's the Anvil.
You had to have charisma, and that was always the bottom line.
And they're competing. I know they're competing with the Hearts here, but they're competing with guys on their side of the card, and they just weren't as good as Tito and Martel. No. And those were two pros.
They needed to be heel, because they needed to be heel and have a manager. They needed to be heels.
And you also have to look at
if they had Jimmy Hart, absolutely. Or
you also have to look at the wrestling landscape and how it had changed since the start of the decade. In like you look at Bret Hart. Like, Bret Hart starts his career, he's wrestling in Stampede, but he goes to Puerto Rico. He goes, kind of all over. He's got all this experience. Then he gets to the WWF, and he's Bret Hart. These guys are only wrestling for a year.
Even then, he wasn't. Bret.
No, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, these guys wrestle for a year. They end up in the WWF, and they're on this stage in Saturday Night's Main Event, and they're expected to kind of be at a certain level. And they were not going to have the same kind of seasoning and experience to match up with the British Bulldogs or the Hart Foundation or Strike Force or these like veteran teams that had a lot of experience.
They were around for a while. I just don't think they had the charisma ever to get there.
But the reason they look, like Brett and Anvil make them look in this match. And Anvil too. I know Brett's the guy who could make a broomstick look good.
Right.
Jim Neidhart too. Like they make these guys look great in this match. Every match in this card is fun. They all have a little bit of length to them. It's a good card.
Right here, the ref is distracted, and they hit the heart attack on Paul Roma and get the win. Bret Hart pins Paul Roma. And another fun match. This is top to bottom. I mean, we still got more, but
we got more than more. We got the pile driver music video, which
that was the last match, right?
Yeah, I could not believe it when I saw the pile driver music video.
Top to bottom, if you don't count the Friday night's main events, I think this was the best Saturday night's main event.
Top to bottom, just to me, if you're in the crowd for that whole taping, it must have been hours. It's a long day. The highlight of the show, one of the highlights happens backstage. Obviously, a very different mindset from now to then. But here we are backstage at Gene Oakland. One of the greatest moments in wrestling history, right? Hogan Savage.
Look at them sell this handshake.
Yeah.
Do you think they just improv'd it, or they were told, do this crazy handshake? You got to wonder where that came up.
If I ever
think that's an original idea.
Savage sells this interview well because it sounds like some of it's planned because he says mega powers, like he's thinking of it. But obviously, and Vince obviously hammered home that madness meets the mania idea because you just heard that over and over again. Which is funny. You never heard Hulkamania or Macho Madness. You just heard Madness Mania. Right. I don't know.
Yeah. The next, again, like I said, this was the start of the next 18 months. This is some of the best storytelling WWF
and
has ever done.
Getting to that point, now it seems like if they were to do this angle now, you're just like, oh, they're just doing it to break them up. Like, that's how everyone fan would see it. And when this angle takes place, you're not necessarily saying, it's more like, oh my God, who are going to stop these guys? They're unstoppable, this unstoppable babyface team. Now, I don't know if...
Right. Well, I remember when I saw it, I'm like, what does this mean? Are they a tag team? Are they, is this a permanent thing? Are they going to go after the tag belts while they're champ? It was just, your mind was just running wild. It was super amazing back then. I remember.
And for whatever reason, if they couldn't do anything wrong, that handshake was, I don't know, it just...
To this day, I mean, it's so unique.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing with that area, being unique and standing out, and that handshake, just that simple grabbing it and acting like you're not trying to shake. It was awesome.
I love Elizabeth not being in that scene too, because Savage was so intense, and to me, it just the slow build to that it simmers for so long.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. The main event, the pile driver video, which was actually for its time, it wasn't bad. And Coco Beware, he was a pretty good singer.
Hey, I'm with you. We had a friend in the hospital a few months ago, and somebody sent him a cameo from Coco. Mm-hmm. Coco sang to him. I think he has a great voice. Yeah. I do, even to this day. But I like Coco's voice. I agree. I think he's better in If You Only Knew, but he's still good here.
So you got Billy Jack Hayden's Bam Bam Bigelow. Was Bam Bam Bigelow ever in a Saturday night's main event match?
Yeah, he comes up.
No, I mean
he's on.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he hasn't been in one yet.
Okay. Coco's got some pipes. You got Honky, Hogan.
The Rock.
Yeah, Don Morocco. You want to talk about... You do see some of the steroid era bodies in this music video. Vince. You got Vince.
Was that Arnold Skoland on the ladder?
I think so, yeah. Totally. With brown hair.
Coco would be good on The Masked Singer.
I saw one episode of that show after the Super Bowl, and I was, good God. But I couldn't turn away from it.
But Coco would be good on it. If he can sing, right?
Scotland getting the cement on the back.
The part with the women is... They're still constructing that building to this day. They probably are. I'm sorry. If they did something like this, you can't go too tongue-in-cheek, but like it would be, again, I love the creativity of this era. They were always trying something new.
A little cameo by Vince in this video, looking at the girls walking by.
Oh,
of course that's when he comes in,
My favorite part of this video
Coco's
is that
Brainbuster. I remember back then.
but they show a wrestling move and it's not a pile driver.
Yeah.
In Coco's defense, we never got to see his finish because he never won. So it was fun to actually see what the thing looked like, you know?
Yeah.
Coco never won.
Coco, he had never went on pay-per-view. I don't think he's ever won on pay-per-view. He'd went on Superstars.
When he tagged with Owen Hart, they didn't win on pay-per-view once.
What's that?
He tagged with Owen Hart as like high energy. They never went on pay-per-view. They never won like a opening match.
And I think he sang. It. Didn't he sing when they came to the ring? High energy?
Well,
or was the theme song his?
Last week. Yeah, we
take
talked
it
about
back.
this
This video wasn't good for its era. But it's I enjoy it as a wrestling fan, but they look like a bunch of pervs out there.
Here's some Vince humor.
It pretty much to a man. The director must have been like, act like you've never seen a woman before. Because that's like Billy Jack Haynes drops the apple. It's like, God, you know.
Right.
But,
well, man, and now we're wrapping it up. Yeah, I like, again, Vince and Bobby, I still like them, but I put them fourth. It's like Vince and Jesse, Gorilla and Bobby, Jesse and Gorilla, and then Vince and Bobby.
it felt a lot more forced. I agree that connection between the two.
Yeah.
I just don't think Vince is that good of an announcer.
Oh, I think he's awesome. He
With
has
Jesse,
excitement.
Yeah.
I'm watching this, and he has like very little credibility. He never he doesn't do a good job like defending the baby faces. I prefer Gorilla a lot in these. I think Gorilla has like more chemistry with both Heenan and Jesse.
Bischoff really learned from the Vince McMahon School of Broadcasting. They were salesmen. That's what they were.
Right.
They were salespeople in that position. That was their job to sell. Where Gorilla, I felt like it was just so different with Gorilla. But I liked Vince too. I couldn't get into as a kid. I couldn't get into like when Tony Schiavone called shows for the World Wrestling Federation or things like that. I was a Vince guy or a Gorilla guy.
Same here. Like NWA, I could, like Jim Ross back in the day. I had a hard time listening to. It was too. It wasn't entertaining. It was too serious. Like it was too sports as opposed to sports entertainment. And when you're, I don't know. It's different strokes for different folks. But Vince always sounded exciting when he was on. Like it was never. Nothing was dull on the show.
And if it was,
Gorilla
he
too.
so it wasn't.
Yeah. All right, and that does it.
All right, that was our Saturday night's main event. Guys, what was your favorite part of the show? You had to pick a highlight.
I mean, I think it's hard to say anything other than Hogan saving Savage and the Mega Powers being born. I mean, that to this day, that's an iconic moment.
But I agree. That's definitely the moment from the show. But I love Andre grabbing Paul Orndorff's tights, and just like Andre, to this day, everything he does is just so. Or you watch, especially like bad guy era Andre. He's mobile here too. Like by WrestleMania 6, he was just so immobile. Or the earthquake, the brief like earthquake feud where he's kind of standing up on Jimmy Hart or using Jimmy as a prop to stand. But I think Andre is such a big part of this show. What he didn't deliver on a surprise. I know Hogan's the man and he's with Savage, but in the background there's still Andre the Giant. So it's they're just cooking on all cylinders right now. So obviously I love that moment in the ring with the Hearts and Randy and Hulk and Liz and Honky, but it's great to see Andre back too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like in history the way people remember it. People think of like. You have WrestleMania 3. That's like kind of the end of Andre's career. To how it's kind of remembered. That was like his last big moment. But basically, he's the top heel in the company. For the next 18 months, and he, they build the first SummerSlam around him. WrestleMania 4 is built in part because of the Hogan Andre rematch. So he does have a lot more, still major moments. After WrestleMania 3.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I don't think he was ever beaten on WWE TV again after WrestleMania 3, by pinfall.
I think does Warrior not
Survivor Series match with the Rockers and Warrior, that was count out, right? That
was count out.
So excited for that match. And it's like, oh, because Andre wearing the blue singlet was fun. I don't know. I can't explain why.
Right.
It was just so exciting.
Yeah.
And even I love, like, I'm a huge Colossal Connection fan. When Andre would get tagged, I love Haku too, but when Andre would get tagged in, good luck looking away. I mean, Andre, whatever that comment was, he looked like $2 million. I'm a huge Andre fan. Jesse, you were talking earlier, you mentioned the book, which is incredible. If people are Andre fans and want to learn more, you were going to mention another, you said you had 2 things about Andre, but you only mentioned one. Do you remember the other?
I just wanted to, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I know for a fact it's on New Japan World, but Andre has a match from 1980 with Stan Hansen that is the best Andre match as far as like work that you'll ever see. And it's so good. And if you're interested in seeing Andre, like he looks like Andre, he's still Andre, but he does it's such an entertaining match. They do like a 15-minute, like kind of like a sprint with a lot of like moves, and they both kind of bump, and it's a really interesting match. I think it's on YouTube. It's definitely on New Japan World.
I'm going to look tonight. Jesse, can I tell you real quick my Stan Hansen story?
Oh, we could spend the next 5 hours talking about Stan Hansen.
So I don't even remember the interview. It was something. Oh, he was working a show, PCW Ultra in Cali, and it must have been, I'm timing now, but I must have had just booked my trip to Japan. I went to Japan a couple summers ago to cover the G1. It's incredible. Like, I mean, you guys would both like eat it up, and it would have been so much fun to do it with other reporters who spoke English, because kind of on your own, it would have been more fun to experience it with others. Anyways, but I wanted to do, even if I was by myself, I wanted to do as many like things in Tokyo I could do, because when am I going back, right? And it's the G1, and it was Nippon Budokan. The whole thing was awesome. So I remember talking to Stan Hansen before and saying, I was going, and Stan Hansen was kind of a legend of Ribera, right? Like the steakhouse. Mm-hmm. And he kind of like didn't say anything when I mentioned it. I'm like, what is the steak not good? He's like, they gave it to me for free. And that was the end of that conversation. But I remember going, and you sit at there's a restaurant in like the old school, like sit down, like at the counter place. I wanted to go to the original, and I sat down at the counter. I don't know how I ordered. I think I maybe pointed to something, or I don't know. And like the steak took like, I didn't 37 seconds to cook. So I knew right then it probably wasn't going to be a delight for me to eat this thing. The corn niblets were good, but the steak was like all bloody, and it was just, but again, it was an experience, right? Like if I went back to Japan, I would go back there again. But cut to the scene of me at McDonald's that night for like the eighth time in 8 days, because it was the one day I could stomach. It was a great trip. And anyways, that's my Stan Hansen story.
Yep. Awesome. So do you ever see No Holds Barred? A real quick judgment, bringing up Andre was a member of the Machines. He was the Giant Machine. There was a question in the chat about that. But Stan Hansen was in No Holds Barred. He was he fights, gets beat up by Zeus. He bullies someone in the bathroom. So
jeez, you're right. I got to go back and look. Great memory, Raj.
Yeah. That was the first time I think I'd actually seen Stan Hansen.
Stan Hansen's book, The Last Outlaw, another great wrestling book.
When that movie was out, I thought that was like, I didn't understand why it didn't win awards. Like, I thought it was that good.
Well, watching Hogan in the music, when watching Hogan's like facial reactions in the music video, it's like, I can't believe this guy thought he could be an actor. Which, he's if you're a big enough celebrity, you can act in anything. But just like his facial reactions were very good for like the pro wrestling of that time. But he's such a bad actor, and it's so obvious in the music video. Would you guys like to see like WWE produce a music video like that now? Like if they just do it more tongue in cheek?
Not too tongue in cheek, but I would love to. I got to ask a question. Judgment. It says, what am I searching on YouTube? Just Bobby Machines. I want to watch that interview. So if you could put that up in the chat.
Which this one? There's a hilarious Heenan clip with an interview with the Machines, which was the precursor to Andre's heel turn. I don't remember that. I'll have to check that out.
You could give a little more info in the chat. I'd love to watch that video tonight.
Absolutely. Huh.
I think it'd be fun, Jesse. They should do more fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce Bennett bringing Savages on his Mount Rushmore. I was a big Hogan fan, Savage all day. If I had a personal Mount Rushmore, I'm the same. Savage, Piper, Austin, and The Rock.
I could come up with a Mount Rushmore if my life depended on it.
Mine would be the WrestleMania 30 guys plus Savage. That's tough too because there's no Andre, but it would probably be the WrestleMania 30 guys and Hogan.
WrestleMania 30 or WrestleMania
3?
30. The opening, the 30, was Hogan.
Rock. Hogan, Rock, Austin.
The opening
gotcha.
show.
Yeah, it was like Batista, Randy Orton, and Daniel Bryan.
Yeah. If I'm not doing my personal, if I'm looking at the biggest WWE stars, it's Hogan, Austin, Rock, and probably Cena.
Bruno.
Yeah.
Bruno, it's a different era. He wasn't. I don't know.
20 years. 20 years.
But that was you didn't see him on TV every week, or every month.
It was a different business. I'm just thinking if you can't dismiss like the first like 20 years of the promotion or further.
I don't think you can compare them either. It's just it's such a different era.
My dream, Justin, and I do not possess the mathematic ability to possibly do this, is I want to come up with like some sort of statistic that would like measure drawing power for error. Like I know there's stats like baseball has WAR and they have like on base percentage plus, and they have all these like error adjusted stats that can tell you like what is this based on like what the styles of the play were. My dream is to come up with like some sort of statistic that can be able to compare like what drawing in like 1930 was to 2020, because it's so different as far as the business change. I have no idea how to put together, but it would help it would solve a lot of my ideas and problems about like, because there's times where like, live attendance is the biggest deal now, but like realistically, WWE is never made more money than it is right now. All the money's in TV deals. And so like, if you're just going by who drew the most money, well, it'd be like the guys who are on top now technically have made the most money for the company. That's not a fair assessment of like individual drawing power. It's just so different.
Yeah, really live events and pay-per-views were the way to be able to tell.
But even that like live event attendance is...
Well, that's what I mean. Like now you can't really do it because unless, with AEW you can. You can...
with the pay-per-view buys, you can at least see like, okay, like you compare the pay-per-view buys and you can say like, okay, whatever the main event was here, this drew this. Right. But even then, it's kind of like is Brody Lee as big of a, like, I don't know what the Double or Nothing number this year is. I've heard that it's similar to their previous numbers. We won't know.
Yeah. I mean,
have you heard anything, Raj or Justin?
Yeah, what I've heard is
the Indies too, because the Indies you could see like. We talked about that show in Everett with the Hardys. Like there was a line out the door. It's so much fun to be like, who still draws? Like old school draws. Who do you get out of your house? Because you can't see the stuff on TV. Who do you leave your house to go watch?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because right now, if you look at TV ratings, Edge has been, according if you look at the ratings in the Observer, Edge
hours.
Yeah, his segments have fallen, and so you
wasn't helped by WrestleMania.
Yeah,
but he's gonna have the greatest wrestling match of all time in a couple of weeks.
Well, I know. Plus, it doesn't help. They always put him on late in the show when everything is dropping anyway. Like that's just the nature of the beast.
And I also think that the wrestling fan base is like kind of homogenized at this point, where like Edge is a really, really big star to like people who are really big WWE fans, but is he the kind of guy that's going to bring back people who haven't watched in 15 years or 20 years? Like you look at like the numbers like Berg did. Like Goldberg did bring back people who didn't watch.
Edge was never a Goldberg. Edge was never.
Yeah. He's a legend to big WWE fans and WWE fans, but he's not like a legend to people who don't really watch wrestling much.
I still wonder.
It'd be the same as Orton. I think if Orton was gone for like 4 years and came back, I don't think it might get a 1 week pop and that'd be it.
If you did Randy Heenan Tuesday Night Titans, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I will do it tonight.
Some of the comments like were outlandish, but the ones that were good, amazing. Some of them I got to look away, but they're really good.
Yeah,
there were a couple of them that I was like, but there are a couple that were outstanding. Thank you very much. What was I just going to say? I wonder if with McIntyre, like trying to make McIntyre the guy, like I wonder if they shifted to McIntyre Orton and you fit Edge in there. I wouldn't want Edge to win the title yet. He could be a threat, but like to me, those three, that'd be a really interesting way to present Edge and Orton, because we already saw him at Mania in a kind of odd match. But you add Drew into that. I don't know, but I know they want to build Drew and they want to make Drew the guy. So I'll be curious where they go next.
I think Edge and Orton would have been a lot better if they had better commentary too. I think just that, the background noise, just like
the Masters commentary.
Oh, it was terrible. If you had Vince and Jesse doing that match, it's like, oh my God, what is he doing? And Jesse's like, whatever, McMahon, he's doing fine.
Well, there's been some of these WWE matches the last
Edge started it.
There's been some of these WWE matches where the guys are kind of put in a position to fail. Like,
I don't think they were.
Well, I don't think it's Edge and Randy Orton's fault that their WrestleMania match was bad. I don't think that's like these guys. It wasn't like these guys were inadequate at something. It was outside of their control. It's the same thing like the Rollins Wyatt Hell in a Cell match. Like that match wasn't bad because like Rollins is a crappy wrestler or something like that. That was just they were put in a position to fail, and unfortunately sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
This comment on the screen right now. I think that idea.
I've said it. I've tweeted this.
If that's the way they go, what a great story. It continues the story. It makes Orton, he's already a primetime player, but
I think Orton.
So real quick for the people listening on the podcast, he's saying, I think they'll swear us the greatest wrestling match will be Orton RKOing Edge in 5 seconds. I think it's the opposite. I think if he beats Edge in 5 seconds and make Edge as the babyface look really bad, I think Edge spears him and pins him. And
see, I agree it would make him look bad, but I like if they go with Orton's promo. Orton is you can't beat me in a wrestling match. Like I think that they're going to build. I don't think it ends at Backlash. I think it continues.
I think a similar thing.
I like that.
But I think the way I would do it, if we're going to hype it up as the greatest wrestling match ever, is that Orton just kicks Edge in the balls and gets disqualified at the start of the match. With the idea being that he cheated fans out of like this greatest wrestling match. It would get more heat on Orton, and it would take because my whole thing is like, and I'm actually going to write. I have this written. I've already written a column about this that's going to run tomorrow on WrestlingInc.com about the kind of like greatest wrestling match ever angle. Like, there's so much pressure on these guys if they're actually going to try to have like a real wrestling match. That's like, if this is like a slow, it's like
right. Like, so even if they had a really good wrestling match, it would be a failure.
Yeah, like I mean, if they were to market this as a wrestling classic or like something like that, yeah, okay. If they have a good match, then it's like, you know what, that lived up to the hype, but you kind of hurt your credibility when you're like, this is the greatest wrestling match ever.
Vince is, I don't care how Vince will be in his deathbed and he'll be making sales and pitches, and like he's a salesman. Whether you like Vince or you hate Vince, he's a salesman. And,
well, I think this is a Heyman idea because it has the W word in it, which Vince doesn't like.
True, but greatest ever. It must be a happy medium because it's got enough hyperbole for Vince to be like, I like it. So.
You think Vince pushed for it to be called the greatest sports entertainment match of all time?
During the phone calls with the wrestlers, so you interview so many wrestlers, and when people refer to themselves as sports entertainers, it's like I always ask them, like, oh, what is that? I don't know, because I don't know what a sports entertainer is to this day. I know what a wrestler is, and I know it's entertaining, and it's a blend of sports and entertainment. But truthfully, I don't know what a sports entertainer is.
It's never caught on, and it's always like it's really exposed when it's used in like other terms, like these are sports entertainment fans, or like that kind of stuff.
I'm all for it. Moving other than something in wrestling, if you could find a term that makes sense, like MMA. It's not it. People use it. It's a term. They still call it fighting, but they still use MMA. If you could find a term that people will use, that's one thing. But they haven't been able to. And sports entertainment is not it.
And it's been 40 years.
No one's like, hey, are you a sports entertainment fan? Or who's your favorite sports entertainer? No one. I've never asked that.
The next time I hear it, it'll be the first. And to me, it's like basketball. Like point guard's a point guard, right? It works. Like you've struck gold. Can we not try to reinvent? I mean, like fullback's a fullback in football. It just, I don't know. The NHL doesn't try to like rename the left wingers to rebrand them. I don't know. They're forwards. I don't know. That part for us. They're pro wrestlers. Take pride in that. I think it's wonderful.
It's fighting an uphill battle and putting too much energy in something that doesn't matter. So,
can we answer this question?
All right. Let's do one or two more, and then we'll wrap it up.
I'm just getting started. I know. Can I read this one?
Yes.
This was Raj, Justin, Jesse. Who's your favorite, or what's your favorite technical wrestler of all time? If I could jump in to start with that, I would probably say that I love the Hitman. I love his matches. I love the stories he tells. But I mean, in the modern era, I think that Daniel Bryan. To me, it's hard to find somebody better than Bryan. Brian's so good at that.
Damn it! You stole my answers.
I'm sorry. Let me just say the Hitman then. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It was Bret Hart for non-active, and then Daniel Bryan for active. And Daniel Bryan, I thought his match with Brock Lesnar was genius. The way he pulled that story together and that story that they told. I think Daniel Bryan's the best. And Brett, back in the day, man, he could have a match with anyone that looked believable. It didn't insult your intelligence. And Brett, his character took a little bit to catch on. Even though he won the title in '92, I felt like it wasn't until '96 after he dropped it to Shawn and then came back when he really
WrestleMania
felt like
11. He is Vince. It seems like at 11 has made up his mind that Brett's not the guy.
Right.
Brett was, the crowd and Brett both said otherwise.
Yeah.
Raj, I'll jump in with that too. I'll always think of Daniel Bryan. If he never wrestles another match, if he wrestles for 10 more years, I think Bryan's run as a heel, including that Survivor Series match with Brock, phenomenal, was better than his run that led to WrestleMania 30. Now, the crowd was so hot for him at 30, it's different. But, like, his run as a heel in terms of consistency in matches, he'd been gone, he came back. Like, he did there. It's hard to capture how great that return was. I think it's better. And I love the stuff. I love the build to wrestling. I love that, all of that. I think it's even better what he did in ending it with Kofi, the way he did at 36. Outrage! Like, my only other honorable mention, and I hope I'm not taking Jesse's guy here, would be Curt Hennig. And it's tough because Curt around to speak, and we don't watch his stuff that much. Like Curt Hennig, his stuff on the other side of the card as the heel was so believable and made guys look great every week or every match. Perfect was great too.
Yeah, as far as like just pure technical wrestling, I like Brett a lot. I've said he's probably my favorite WWF wrestler of all time. But when I think of Brett, I think of like his storytelling, and I think of like that aspect of him. He's a really good like technical wrestler, obviously, but I don't think of him as like being like this master technician. He's almost like too good just for that label. I would say that my favorite, I would say Dynamite Kid as just a pure like straight worker. And then if I were to give a modern name, the two guys that stand out to me as far as like, I think Zack Sabre Jr. is super creative with his wrestling style. I think it's different. I think he's like the way he comes up with new submission moves, new roll-ups, different finishes to all of his matches. And then I'm also a really big fan of Roger Strong. I've always been a big fan of him. I think he has a certain kind of like intensity to what he does, and he's also really creative with his backbreakers and that kind of stuff. And I always find myself really enjoying his matches. So if I'm going by like pure technical guys, those would be my favorites.
Jesse, I thought, and I think that this current era is hurting Roddy Strong, but like after the Survivor Series, I thought that was the triple threat with Styles and Nakamura that he won. I thought that was it. I'm like, something's gonna happen. Either they put him on the main roster or I think he's been hurt a little bit by the lack of crowds. And
if people want to watch great wrestling that's really entertaining as well, and they maybe haven't seen it before, and they've done a great job during this pandemic uploading stuff to their YouTube, like Prime Ring of Honor, like 2004 to 2008, has so many great matches, and just like basically every guy that's a big name now is there. They uploaded a match, and it's like the second match on the card, and it's Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan versus Tyler Black, who's Seth Rollins, versus Kenny Omega in a triple threat. And it's like, what? It's just like a random match on the card. It's if you look back at like some of the old Ring of Honor cards and just the amount of talents that they were able to get on their cards, unreal.
We got a couple other people chiming in.
Yeah, Benoit's an answer.
Benoit. Another Bruce Bennon who's been on fire tonight. Kurt Angle, Benoit, and Eddie. Three great choices, because not only great technical wrestlers, but they were able to get over in front of.
Can I ask a quick question?
20 right there. Those are your guys.
Can I ask a quick related question? I know we got to wrap it up here. Do you guys have any favorite wrestlers who were like not really big stars, but you felt you were like a specific big fan of?
Salvatore Sincere comes to mind.
Marty Jannetty.
I'm with you, Raj. I am a huge Marty Jannetty fan.
I was always pushing for him. I was always hoping he'd be able to put stuff past him and get that right storyline, get his life straight and move on. But just never happened.
Sorry, Jessica. If Marty came 10 years later, like he was just, it wasn't the right time. The middle of the card was so packed. You couldn't win the IC belt. You couldn't win the tag titles. If Marty came around a little, and I know he won the IC belt, but if Marty, and he won the tag titles, but if Marty came around later, I think he would have been a really special mid card again, there's no shame in like being. It's hard to get to the top of the card, but you need a middle of the card to the top of the card to work. I think Marty was just before his time.
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of Too Cold Scorpio.
Yeah.
I always thought that, going back and watching he's really ahead of his time as like a high flyer, doing like really cool moves, and was pretty big. Like he's this guy, he's like probably like 6'2", like 230 pounds, and he's doing like, 450 splash. He's doing the moonsault into a leg drop, and unfortunately, he never really got a chance in the WWF.
Flash Funk had no legs. Yeah.
The problem with that is that they have him come out and they have him like wrestle like the job guys, which doesn't work if you're a guy like Scorpio, because he needs like good guys to work with, to sell his moves and to, take Hurricanranas and stuff like that. So you can't just put him out there with anyone. And the gimmick and the outfit and all that stuff just didn't work for him. But he's always been a guy. Go back and watch like ECW stuff.
I'm going to say real quick, current era, and granted it's too soon. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah.
But guys in the NWA, Nick Aldis, I think is a superstar. I think he checks all the boxes. James Storm, I still think has got a lot behind him, and Eli Drake. I think that guy is got a ton of potential, and the fact that those definitely Eli Drake and Nick Aldis, because they're a little younger. James Storm's been around for a while. I think on that national platform, if they're given the chance, those guys could be huge stars.
When you look at Eli Drake, I just don't get what he doesn't have.
Yeah,
like, he can talk. You look at that guy and you see him. It's like, what can't this guy do? So I agree. He's one of those conundrums for me. WWE, and I'm always partial to the smaller guys. To Chad Gable. I just think, what do you do? Why wouldn't you let this guy? And I know like DiBiase is DiBiase because he's the $1 Million Man. But Shane Douglas is a great example. He was much better as the franchise than he was as a cartoon character.
Right. As the Dean. I
love Chad Gable. I wish he just had a chance to work. I feel like if he was in AEW, he's one of those guys that like would be tearing down the house every week. I hope they give Gable a run. I think he's special.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised he wasn't someone who asked for his release.
Well, you got to look at. There's an echo somewhere. Are you guys hearing that?
No.
Okay. I'm hearing it.
Okay. There is a thing where so far the guys that have went over so far that have really gotten elevated. I don't know who you would say yet. Brody Lee, it's too early to say. Ty Dillinger is Sean Spears. He's not much higher up than he was. So I mean, there's no guarantees. It's a crowded space.
When it comes to AEW and the guys who succeed, to me, I'm thinking of real creative guys who have a lot of their own ideas. Like I think it was clear the reason I knew Moxley would do well, and this is before I even knew he was going to go to AEW. When he just found out he was going to leave, WWE, he struck me as a guy who's really creative, that has his own ideas, that wants to cut his own promos, and he struck me as someone who I knew was going to succeed. For someone that maybe doesn't have that natural side of creativity, they might struggle in outside WWE, where you are going to have to come up with your own promos, and you're going to have to come up with your own gimmick, and you're going to have to come up with your own ideas for your character, and not everyone's going to be adept at that, even if they're good in regards.
Yeah, so what I'm talking about is someone who wasn't a main eventer from WWE that went to AEW and was really elevated long term. And granted, AEW hasn't been around that long because Moxley obviously had a ton of success. He headlined pay-per-views in WWE. So
even Cody, I know Stardust at the end Cody had a ton of success in WWE. So,
but I knew Cody was going to be good because Cody,
Omega, Young Bucks were big before with that audience before AEW started. So as far as since AEW started, you've seen guys like Jungle Boy elevated, but to get to that, MJF, but to get that main event level, I think MJF so far, I think he's been sustaining, being near the top of the card.
He's the only guy to me that makes sense to dethrone Moxley. It won't be Cage, but I think that MJF's the guy. And I think you want Mox chasing. Right? That's the whole point. Keep the title run, like Austin's first title run, keep it short. I think, especially in this odd, funky time, like go with the heel. Go with MJF. I would be excited to see him as world champion. I'm already watching every segment he's in, but I think it would be even more can't miss with the belt around his waist.
Yeah, I think Rebellion, that should be I'm not All Out. That should be the match. MJF versus Moxley, and MJF wins the belt.
Yeah, I think he has unfinished business with Cody, so I could see All Out being like an MJF Cody match.
You have MJF beat Moxley, and then he lifts Cody's stip, you know, and
or maybe Wardlow costs him. Like Wardlow says, if you beat me, or because he's not supposed to talk, which I love the fact he shouldn't talk. To me, the Wardlow character got so much better when he stopped talking because it made it even more despicable. Yeah. But maybe Wardlow blows it for MJF, and then Cody finally gets his match. I kind of hope that match doesn't happen for 2 more years. It's a tough story to do in the modern era, but
I don't want them to split them up yet.
Yeah. What's that?
I don't want them to split up MJF and Wardlow yet. It's too
soon.
Nor do
I. But I liked how if Wednesday night is the beginning of a super slow burn of him,
tease.
It reminds me of it. The toy with Richard Pryor, like the little kid, like just driving him crazy over. But I don't want to see that in 6 weeks.
Right.
I hope that's 18 months.
It's like Triple H and Batista, but you stretch it out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you'll love Wardlow by the end of it. You make him a star. Like you'll want to see this guy lash out, kind of like Virgil DiBiase. And that was one of those old school ones that they didn't rush it. They probably could have pulled the trigger a few times earlier and pulled the plug and didn't. I'm with you. I hope that lasts for a long time.
All right. That's it for this episode. Justin, do you want to plug anything?
So this week, trying to just provide different points of view. We had an interview with Hiroshi Tanahashi that was yesterday's Week in Wrestling column that ran yesterday, and Tana thought he doesn't believe it's a good look to run pro wrestling shows during the pandemic. So that was an interesting chance to hear from a major worldwide star in Tanahashi. Evan Husney's in that column too, and he talks about optimism for a season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring as well. And if they can make it happen, maybe doing things like traveling, like going to Japan and different places. And my favorite part, I shouldn't say my favorite part, but I like the column we end with Squared Circle Burger, who J.L. Ryan in West Virginia is starting a wrestling-themed hamburger shop. And some of the burgers he's created are pretty special. So that was yesterday. There was a story. It was a Q&A with Seth Rollins on Monday. There's a Moose story on Tuesday. I'm jumping around. Becky Lynch was this past Sunday. And I don't think I'm going to have anything out tomorrow. But if you follow me on Twitter, I should have something new out on Saturday. I'm just kind of finalizing that now. But if you follow me on Twitter, at Justin Barrasso, there should be something new this Saturday.
Absolutely. And on Wrestling Inc., my interview with Ric Flair dropped this week. We also have Kevin Smith, actor Kevin Smith, who's directed a ton of classics, including the Jay and Silent Bob series. ODB, the composers of Dark Side of the Ring, who talk about the original concept of the show. And then we got Paul Walter Hauser coming up tomorrow, who was the star. Yeah, star Richard Jewell. Gives a big update on Cobra Kai Season 3 and just talks all things AEW, Double or Nothing, Dynamite, the Mike Tyson angle, all that stuff. So a bunch of cool stuff coming up.
Kind of everything right with like a celebrity wrestling. To me, he's a celebrity wrestling fan. Like just passionate. You know what I mean? Like he maybe not like a Maria Menounos type, not Maria, but I think Paul's very, very good.
Yeah.
Not that Maria's not.
Yeah, some North Shore crime. And I got on Wrestling tomorrow. I'll have an article alluded to earlier talking kind of about the greatest wrestling match of all time. Stipulation that has been thrown into this Backlash show. Kind of looking at taking that at face value, and also kind of looking at is it even possible to have the greatest wrestling match of all time? Which the answer is it isn't, because everyone has a different opinion. And even if this match is absolutely mind-blowingly awesome, people are going to be like, it wasn't as good as Taker versus Shawn at WrestleMania 25.
Plus, in this environment, without a crowd, it's impossible.
But even with a crowd, I feel like there's just people have, people have their favorite all-time matches, and it's going to be, it's going to be tough for a match in 2020 to do that, because there's all sorts of factors going in. But I'll be up tomorrow morning on WrestlingInc.com. That's it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This was great. We'll be back again. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Thanks so much for listening.